Are we good to go?
We are.
Okay. And good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's Licensing Committee, December the 21st, 2022. So the first task is to elect a chairman, and my name is Councillor Jude Butt, and I'm deemed to be the presiding person at this meeting by nature of being chair of the Licensing Committee. So I'd like to ask, please, for nomination for chair. Thank you.
Nominate yourself, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. May I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So we'll now go to our clerk, Mrs. Hollyoake, please, and could you take us through housekeeping? Thank you, Mrs. Hollyoake.
Thank you, Chair. Please note this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for subsequent broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Please ensure that you unmute yourself and always turn on the video function before speaking. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each person has made their representation, the Chair will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please use the raise your hand function at the top right of the screen. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'll just give everybody a moment with regard to the phones, although I'm sure they've done those beforehand. So we start then with any apologies, please, Mrs. Hollyoake.
We've had no apologies today.
Okay, I have apologies from Councillor Julie Bagwell. Unfortunately, she can't join us this morning, so that will mean that our subcommittee will be joined instead, as we have this morning. Councillor Kelsey is joining instead of Councillor Bagwell. Thank you very much. So moving on then to declarations of interest, I'll ask these of each councillor. Councillor Kelsey, any declarations of interest?
Sorry, I was muted. No declarations from me, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Anderson?
No declarations of interest.
And for completeness, none from me either. Thank you, Mrs. Hollyoake. So moving on then to item 4, which is the printed protocol for public speaking. Please note that it is a revised protocol because obviously it's a virtual meeting and it has been circulated with the agenda sheet. Everybody should have that in their agenda sheet. So moving on then to our substantive, which is item 5, and it is with regard to the ratio bar, formerly known as exchange, which is just an X and then the word change, for the Triangle Bournemouth. An application for a new premises licence has been received for the premises known as ratio bar, formerly known as exchange, for the Triangle Bournemouth. This matter is brought before the Licensing Subcommittee for determination. So I'll now ask if each member, that's elected member, would introduce themselves and state their ward if they so wish. I'll start with myself. My name is Councillor Jude Butt. I'm chair of the Licensing Committee, and I'm also chairman of this subcommittee for the purposes of today's business. And my ward is Creekmore, Hilborn and Waterloo. Councillor Anderson.
Yes, good morning. I'm a member of the Licensing Committee and I represent Moor Down Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, Councillor Kelsey, member for East Cliff and Springbourne and a member of today's subcommittee.
Okay, and we did have with us Councillor Kieran Wilson, who stood in as a reserve member. So many things. Oh, you are still with us, Kieran. I see you there. Thank you very much for attending this morning, but you're not needed. So you may now go and finish that Christmas shopping. We know you won't have finished, but thank you for attending and having taken the trouble to have read the pack, etc., etc. Wishing you a happy Christmas. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Chair. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Mr. Wright. Would you like to introduce yourself, Mr. Wright?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting.
Okay.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Wright. I'm director with APPL Solutions Limited, licensing consultant.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. And then we have your client, Mr. Mukhana, if you'd just like to introduce himself quickly.
I am William Muhanna, the new owner of Ratio Bar Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Muhanna. We have Sergeant Gareth Gosling.
Good morning, Chair. It's Sergeant Gareth Gosling from Dorset Police Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team.
Thank you very much. And Vanessa Rosales.
Hi, Chair. Good morning, Chair. It's Vanessa from Dorset Police Licensing Officer.
Thank you very much. And Andrew Hill.
Good morning, Chair. I'm Andy Hill from BCP's Environmental Health Team.
Thank you very much. And then our legal advisor, giving it away, Mrs. Cole.
Good morning, it's Linda Cole, the legal advisor to the subcommittee today.
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Jardim?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. It's Tanya Jardine, Licensing Officer for BCP Council.
Thank you very much. And already introduced our clerk, but our clerk, Mrs. Hollyoak, just like to make yourself known.
Gil Hollyoak, clerk to the subcommittee.
Thank you very much. So just check then, before we go any further, that everybody who's given notice of their intention to speak has been identified. And if anybody doesn't now wish to speak or wishes to withdraw the representation, they say so now by showing a hand or indicating in some fashion. I'm not seeing anything, so we will take that at all parties are content. So I'll now quickly go through the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows. The licensing officer, that'll be Mrs. Jardine, will present her report, and the applicant, Mr. Wright, will make his application. There'll be questions of the applicant by all party. Members of the subcommittee will go first. The responsible authorities, there are no other persons here today, will then make their representations, and questions of the responsible authorities will then be made. Members of the committee will then go first. After that, all parties will be given the opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. I will then conclude the hearing, and the subcommittee will deliberate in private with our legal advisor and our clerk present. Notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day on the last day on which the hearing was held in accordance with the regulations, which is today, December the 21st, 2022. And the notification decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate, and I will ask our legal advisor at the time to advise us of that right of appeal information. So just asking now that all parties are content with that procedure. Mrs. Jardim, are you content?
I am content. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Wright? Yes, I can see a nod. Mr. Moana?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
fine, thank you.
Okay. And Sergeant Gosling?
Sorry, I was struggling with some
You
technology
were away,
there.
weren't
Yes,
you? Just asking that you're content with the proposed procedure to this morning.
yes, content, as will Vanessa be as well. Thank you.
Okay, I will just ask Vanessa. Vanessa, are you Mrs. Rosales? Is it Mrs. Rosales or
Miss Chair.
Miss Rosales? Are you content?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Hill?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
And Mrs. Cole?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So just finally, just to remind all parties, we do have quite a few parties here today. So those who are speaking, not to repeat the information which you've already given in writing, but please do expand on your written representations. And all questions through the chair, please. And I will indicate as to who's speaking as we go through for clarity, and no cross-examination of parties. Thank you. So it leaves me then to invite our officer, Mrs. Jardim, to present her report. Mrs. Jardim, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the application before you today is to consider whether to grant a new premises licence at 4 The Triangle, Bournemouth. These premises were previously licensed and known as Exchange, however have been vacant since 2019 when the licence was revoked. The application was submitted by Mr. Steve Wright on behalf of Ratio Bars Limited and is to permit the provision of regulated entertainment and the supply of alcohol on the premises Monday to Sunday, 2100 to 0500 hours. The licensing office received 2 representations against the application from Dorset Police and Environmental Health on the grounds that granting the application would undermine the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance licensing objectives. It is understood from the police report that during the consultation period, the applicant have offered to reduce the terminal hour for the supply of alcohol to 0300 hours, Sunday to Thursday, and the opening hours to terminate at 0330 on these days. However, Dorset Police was still concerned that the applicant had not offered sufficient conditions with regards to the last entry times, CCTV, training, use of glass, drug policy, participation in town watch, radio connectivity between SIA and staff, and measures to manage the welfare and safety of customers. In addition, Dorset Police has informed that no formal agreements have been made with regards to the newly offered timings, and their representation still stands. In an attempt to mediate the environmental health with environmental health, the applicants have employed an acoustic consultant who has provided some reports that have been circulated. However, no agreement has been reached with the Environmental Health Officer, and their representation also still stands. We received no other representations from any of the other responsible authorities. Members are asked to consider whether to grant this application, and should the licence be granted and the applicants fail to operate in accordance with their licence and any conditions attached to it, they will be aware that any responsible authorities or other persons may request a review of the licence at any time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Jardim. And just to remind people that we do have exempt information today. So if we do, if that exempt information is raised at any time, I will go into in camera because obviously there is information there which is pertinent to a particular individual, and with regard to our requirements not to disclose that name. Then we would need to go into in-camera meetings. So just to be clear, and I'll be asking if that does happen, then we'll just have to stop proceedings and do that. I hope everybody's happy with that. And I would ask you, you've all had the exempt information. There is no name, but just in case, if there were to be a conversation around that, it's safer that we go in camera, just in case that name is mentioned and that person is then in the public domain. I hope that helps. I don't know if you want to add anything, Mrs. Hollyoak, whether I covered that sufficiently.
No, that's great. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your report, Mrs. Jardim. Now, are there any questions of fact regarding the report? Members, Councillor Kelsey. Oh, you're muted, Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, sorry, not from me, Chair.
You're fine. Right. Okay. Councillor Anderson. Okay, what I think might be helpful is in your report, your verbal report, you did give a list of the reasoning as to why the police were not so content and had raised their objection. Would you, I think it would be helpful if you were to just email that, please, to members so that they had that in front of them. There are one item in there I didn't quite catch, and I don't think I've noted it myself. Would that be okay, Mrs. Jardim?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, Chair. It's on the supplementary information submitted by Dorset Police. But
Yeah.
I'll email it to you.
Yes,
No
there's a
problem.
long list, isn't there? But you've made it very succinct and very simple in your report, as always. So I think that might assist the members. Thank you very much. So if there's no any questions from the members, Mr. Wright, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Jardim, please?
Yeah, just to ask if members have had sight of the policies and procedures submitted with the application.
Yes,
submitted recently.
Yep, we have had all. I did ask at the beginning if everybody had had the documentation, and I will just check that everybody has had the said documentation. I'm getting lots of nods, Mr. Wright, so you can be assured that everybody has. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions for Mrs. Jardim? Mr. Wright?
Not from me, no.
Okay. Okay. I will treat you, obviously, as your representation today, that you are acting on behalf of Mr. Wright. So I won't be bringing Mr. Muhana in, unless, of course, he wishes to add anything throughout the proceedings. But I will revert to you with regard to your client, if that's okay. Are you content with that?
That's fine.
Thank you very much. Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions on points of fact for Mrs. Jardim?
No questions from me, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And Mrs. Rosales, do you have any?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay. And Mr. Hill?
No, nothing from me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for a concise and informative report, as always, Mrs. Jardim. So now it's an opportunity for our applicant to present their application. So, Mr. Wright, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to members of the subcommittee. First and foremost, I'd like to stress that Ratio Bars Limited have nothing to do with the owners of the premises known as Exchange Bar. I'd like to make that absolutely crystal clear that they are nothing to do with Ratio Bars. Ratio Bars Limited negotiated their lease with the owners of the building who are in London, and signed a lease in October 2022 this year. Furthermore, the flats above the premises for the triangle are now vacant. They were not vacant at the time of the visit by two officers from Dorset Police, but I can assure the committee that the premises are now vacant at some cost, I must add, to Ratio Bars. So to emphasise, Ratio Bars are a completely separate company and have no links to the previous owners or management when known as Exchange Bar. So Ratio Bars Limited will operate to a high standard with policies and procedures designed to demonstrate this, which members have said that they had, which I included when I submitted the application, and most recently again on Tuesday the 19th of December. So members of the subcommittee had some had sight of them. Mr. Mohana is currently a member of Pub Watch and regularly attends the meetings. This will of course continue while not a proposed condition, but we are happy that a condition is attached to the licence as follows. The premises licence holder shall be a member of Pub Watch and regularly attend meetings. Members will have read the policies and procedures as part of the and as part of the mediation. I included the proposed conditions, but unfortunately I didn't receive a response to the policies and the proposed conditions. However, the proposed conditions in that document are fully in the application, and obviously will be attached to the licence. They stand by the proposed conditions, and I will offer some additional conditions as I go through the presentation.
I think, Mr. Wright, what would be handy is by all means do offer the conditions as you go through, but I'd like a summary, please, as to any conditions that you're offering at the end of your submission. That would be very helpful to the subcommittee. Thank you.
Okay, I will write them down. One of the conditions attached, which we have discussed with Dorset Police, was the inclusion of a metal detector at the door. So it's a metal arch. That is included in the conditions anyway, so it's not an additional condition. That's to allay any fears of metal objects, particularly knives, getting into the venue. Dorset Police asked about the anticipated occupancy when we met, and we immediately engaged a specialist to provide an occupancy of 172. That includes staff. While the occupancy is not a licensing consideration per se, I can assure the subcommittee that in accordance with primary legislation, the fire safety risk assessment will be carried out as all businesses are obliged to do. Louise Busfield intimated that 150 would be acceptable, but an occupancy of 300 would give the police cause for concern. So as members of the subcommittee can see, 172, including staff, is within the occupancy acceptable to Dorset Police. It was intimated at this meeting that while the occupancy was of concern, they would submit a holding objection, subject to information. I sent an email on the 16th of November to Vanessa Rassells with the occupancy of 172. I offered to meet Sergeant Gosling following the site meeting with his officers to discuss his concerns in detail in the hope of mediated resolution. The response from Sergeant Gosling dated the 7th of December stated he has no questions or concerns to answer and that I was in receipt of the representation with supplementary information to follow, which I received on the 16th of December, which I will go through in a bit more detail. I think it's true to say I was disappointed that we couldn't meet to try and mediate things away, if you like, and that the actual information suggested that there were details and concerns which I would have hoped we could have had a meeting to discuss and resolve. But nevertheless, we are where we are. I will turn my attention to the supplementary information provided by Dorset Police. As I've stated, the background to the premises is not relevant to the application made by Ratio Bars Limited, in my opinion. The company policy states a total of 6 SIA staff. However, this was not a proposed condition, except to say that the SIA staff will be engaged. As Sergeant Gosling states, this is welcome, but also unusual. We anticipate a full complement of SIA staff on Friday and Saturday, but a risk assessment approach will be adopted. It is unreasonable to condition the licence, in my opinion, to have 6 SIA staff 7 days a week. For example, Tuesdays and Thursdays may be quiet evenings with few customers. Therefore, we would like to reduce the number to the occupancy. So if we only have 20 or 30 people on the premises, 6 SIA door staff would obviously be quite a lot and quite an expense to the company. But rest assured that SIA staff will be engaged, and Fridays and Saturdays they will have 6 on site. There'll be 2 at the front door and 4 inside what is quite a small premises in terms of a nightclub. So they yes, to allay the fears of the committee and what the police have said, they may be reduced, but they'll be reduced on a risk assessment basis depending on the occupancy. The risk assessment approach will not place an unnecessary financial burden on this new business, particularly in the current climate. However, Ratio Bars will ensure sufficient SIA staff are on duty. The hotspot map in the report, I note, and I note the hotspot map submitted. If Ratio Bars Limited are successful, they will control their premises to the highest standards and the immediate vicinity, as demonstrated by the condition offered to retain SIA staff for 30 minutes following the closing time in order to monitor the outside area, which was accepted by Dorset Police. While no cumulative impact policy exists, we accept responsibility for the immediate area. We will encourage customers to leave the area, to keep noise to a minimum, and to respect the people who live in the area. The proposed hours are those contained within the application of 0500. However, the proposed premises is purely a nightclub and not a bar that trades all day and into the early evening, but for a short period from 2200 hours to 0500 hours, a total of 7 hours, as opposed to a bar which operates for 16 or 17 hours a day. So this is purely a nightclub that will not open during the day, but purely in the evening, hence the request for 0500. There is a distinct difference, and we would invite members of the subcommittee to take this into consideration when deliberating. Of course, there will be busy evenings such as Fridays and Saturdays, possibly Wednesdays and bank holidays, including bank holiday Sunday. Ratio Bars must accept the quiet evenings when they choose to open or not. They may not choose to open on certain evenings due to a lack of custom. but they would like the flexibility, or they would request the flexibility to be able to operate the business, particularly in the current climate. And that is why the 0500 was requested in the first place, to give the business the flexibility to operate. We note the offer made by Dorset Police to allow the premises to open until 0300 hours, 7 days a week. It is our submission that we can operate the premises for the additional 2 hours in the same way that we will operate the premises until 0300 hours. While sympathy abound for police resources, it cannot be the responsibility of ratio bars to control the triangle and area or areas surrounding the triangle, but we will ensure control of our premises and the immediate area. The concerns shared about the accommodation above, while understandable given the history of the premises owners, I would suggest is not a relevant consideration for this licensing authority.
Sorry, Mr. Wright, would you just repeat that? I didn't quite catch what you said.
The concerns shared about the accommodation above, while understandable given the history of the previous owners, I would suggest is not a relevant consideration for this licensing authority.
Thank you.
It is private accommodation. The supplementary information asks about CCTV. On the plan submitted with the application, it shows 13 cameras covering the bar areas, toilet area or lobby, not the actual cubicles, and 2 outside the premises. The conditions offered in the application state that a CCTV system will operate at all times the premises is open for business. In fact, it will operate 24/7 through motion detection. So if somebody does enter the premises, the CCTV system will work. The cameras outside, as people walk past, will record people as they walk past. However, the cameras outside may not be deemed suitable by Dorset Police for recognition of customers. So an additional camera will be fitted, which will then total 14 cameras inside the lobby, facing the front door, in which everybody will have to pass through the metal detector arch.
Can I just ask, Mr. Wright, this extra camera, is this another offered condition?
It can be a condition. I can assure the committee that the additional camera will be added to the front door. But if you wish to put that as a condition, we are more than happy for that.
Well, obviously, if we were so disposed to grant, but I'm just trying to investigate as to whether that is an offer or which it could be assured. Thank you. Carry on.
Yes, by all means. We are happy to have that as a condition. I've made a note of that. Training. The company will provide induction training for all new staff, because as it's a new business, then all staff will be new to this particular business, and all staff will receive training. It is proposed to carry out refresher training every 12 months, but we note that the police have requested this refresher training is carried out every 6 months. We would like to stay with the refresher training every 12 months. And because I don't fully understand why 6 months would be beneficial, because they have induction training. There will be ongoing training if the legislation changes or there are issues at the premises. There will be discussions around the evening and what happened, so on and so forth. So training will be just ongoing all the time. But formally, to put it on paper, it will be every 12 months. We would also like to amend what the police are saying and say a suitably qualified person and not an accredited company. This is an additional expense for the club when there are suitably qualified, competent people who can provide the training for the company. Of course, it's in the gift of the committee if they wish to have training every 6 months. And to have every 6 months by an accredited company would put additional burden on the company. The use of polycarbonate is agreed throughout. The application said that we would have polycarbonate throughout the premises except for champagne. The police have suggested that they would not be happy with this, so champagne flutes will be polycarb or plastic, so the glass will be removed, and we are happy to have that as a condition. The supplementary information refers to the lack of a drugs policy as a significant omission. Members will have had sight of the policies and procedures, and in those policies and procedures you will find a drugs policy, some two pages of information regarding drugs and what the company will do with the drugs. It's not the company's intention to call the police every 5 minutes if they find drugs. They will have a drug safe where they will store any contraband that's been confiscated. The only time that they would call the police is maybe to come and collect the drugs, or they will take them to the police station, or if there is a dealer within the premises that they've identified, and that is when they call the police to come and deal with somebody who is dealing drugs on the premises or immediately outside the premises. Ratio bars agree to be members of Pub Watch and use the radio link system. Mr. Mahana is currently a member of Pub Watch as condition of licence at premises he owns in Old Christchurch Road, and where he is currently the DPS for the premises. And I think this might be a good opportunity just to give you some background about the DPS, Mr. Mahana. He owns and currently operates in the nighttime economy. He deals nightly with customers who attend his premises, as do his staff under his guidance. It's true to say that Mr. Mahana is an experienced operator who can currently sell alcohol from his premises. He is known by police officers who have not sought to object to his position as DPS. Given the environment in which he currently operates, I have no doubt that he can and will operate the new premises to the highest standards. He has operated in Bournemouth for over 10 years in his current premises, and during that time he's got to know his clientele and is well aware of the issues in and around Bournemouth. The issue of handheld radios was mentioned. Given the size of the venue, it's not proposed to supply handheld radios for all SIA and staff. However, SIA staff will communicate via radio, with staff told to inform SIA staff of their concerns if necessary. Because of the size of the venue, it is you can stand in one position and you can see the whole premises. Maybe apart from the toilet, which you have to go up one level to the toilet area. We don't propose for everybody to have a radio, but SIA staff will talk to each other through the radios, through a radio, and staff will then either raise it with the DPS if they have concerns, or they will go and talk to an SIA member of staff, which will probably be no more than 3 or 4 meters away. So it's not, because the premises is just not that big. Ratio bars agree to the following condition as suggested by the police, that a personal licence holder will be present during trading hours. Sorry, I'm just making a note. If I can turn my attention now to the noise or alleged noise, again, what happened before and noise complaints before are not anticipated by Ratio Bars. It's a completely separate company, and things will be vastly different to what went before. Ratio Bars have engaged a sound engineer to carry out a noise assessment, which was completed and sent to Mr. Hill. However, despite constantly chasing the consultant, the report was delayed, unfortunately. I spoke to him only yesterday, the sound consultant, Mr. Chilvers, and he said that he's waiting for specialist construction companies to provide information about how the structure can be improved. The premises has been stripped inside. It is back to bare brick and to bare timbers, and it's waiting now for the report on the noise side, so the structure can be reintroduced in accordance with whatever the report says. Mr. Hill's not satisfied with the report or the lack of other information, and there are some conditions that I will offer, hopefully to satisfy the subcommittee and to satisfy Mr. Hill. And I apologise to Mr. Hill and to the subcommittee for not having these reports, but they were just outside of our gift, unfortunately. Ratio Bars have significantly invested in the lease for this property. They've committed to a 15-year lease. The application process, of course, a sound engineer and some building work to strip out the premises. They are determined to satisfy Mr. Hill, environmental health, and trusted the sound engineer to provide the evidence. But as I say, unfortunately, we haven't got that. So in order to provide peace of mind for the subcommittee, we offer the following conditions, which effectively mean that the premises cannot open until environmental health are satisfied, that suitable and sufficient sound attenuation measures are in place. They are: a suitable and sufficient sound engineer's report will be submitted for the approval of environmental health. A suitable and sufficient schedule of works will be submitted for the approval of environmental health. And 3, all works will be completed in accordance with the approved documents submitted to environmental health prior to opening the premises. So these conditions will prevent the business from opening until the premises is constructed in accordance with the report. The approval of the licence with the stringent proposed conditions will also provide Ratio Bars with a viable business following their continued investment and commitment to provide a quality venue in the Triangle. That is the conclusion of my submission, Chair. Would you like me to go through the additional conditions now or when I summarise?
No, now, please. Thank you.
Sorry?
I'd like you to do that now, please, Mr. Wright. Thank you. If you could be concise but clear in the conditions that you are.
Condition 1, members, Ratio Bars will be a member of Town Watch. 2, an additional camera will be installed in the lobby facing the front door. Champagne flutes will be in polycarbonate or plastic. There is a drugs policy. There will be a drug safe. A personal license holder will be on the premises at all times when the premises is open. A suitable and sufficient sound engineer's report will be submitted for the approval of environmental health. A suitable and sufficient schedule of works will be submitted for the approval of environmental health. All works will be completed in accordance with the approved documents submitted to environmental health prior to opening. So this effectively means ratio bars have the security of the license in place, but cannot open until environmental health are satisfied. I hope that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. Members content that they have all that? Let's go through it again. To be a member of Town Watch, the camera in the lobby, all glasses to be polycarb or champagne. There is a drugs policy where that was questioned by the police. There's also drugs safe. Personal license holder will be on premises at all times when the premises is open. And then 6, we've got a sound engineer report, we've got a schedule of works report, and we've got a works complete with regard to approval for the document prior to opening. So I think those are all your offered conditions. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Chair. Thank you very much. Right, well, thank you very much for that submission. So, members, questions for Mr. Wright. Councillor Kelsey, do you have any questions?
I have several, please, Chair.
Yes.
If I may.
If what we could do, Councillor Kelsey, is I know you will have lots of questions, and I know Councillor Anderson will, and I know I will, so we don't bore each other. Would it be okay if you put, say, 3 questions, and then I'll go to your colleague? Would that be okay? And then I can come back to you. Yeah.
Absolutely fine by me, Chair.
Okay, fire away. Thank you. You have the floor.
Yeah. Okay, firstly, Mr. Wright, the accommodation above the bar, what is that going to be used for now?
It may be used for office space. It may be used for accommodation.
Mr. Wright, you're saying may. Now, obviously, the concerns are about noise. We need to know what it is going to be used for, because even though you said it would be private people are still allowed to a decent night's sleep. So they would still be affected by noise from those premises. So what we need to know as a committee is it going to be accommodation? And also in your report, you stated that there's not much other living accommodation within the area. Well, I'm going to deny that, because there is actually a lot, and a very lot of accommodation in that area, both either side of the building and on the opposite side of the triangle as well, not to mention on the other side of Commercial Road. So I'd like to know where you got this not much accommodation point from, please.
Yes, if you'd like to answer those 2 points, please. And it is very important that the subcommittee do know the plans for the accommodation of other premises. Thank you.
I will ask William in a moment to give his view on the accommodation. The report, the engineer's report, and the schedule of works will, I can't say completely insulate the building from all property. That's nigh on impossible. But the structural engineer has taken sound readings in the flats immediately above, and the structure will be such that the premises to the side and above are not unduly affected by the noise from the club. However,
don't like the word unduly, Mr. Wright.
However, if they are turned into accommodation, and that is obviously up to Mr. Mahana, if they are turned into accommodation, then you are moving into a premises above a club, and you will know that there are implications of that. However, I can't speak for Mr. Mahana and what he intends to do with the private accommodation. May I ask him to answer that question?
Yes, if you would, please. And then Councillor Kelsey, you please do come back on that point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Mahama, if you'd like to answer Councillor Kelsey's question, please.
Hi. If the accommodation we'll be using for our staff, as we have quite 15 employee in our restaurants, and they will be in the club. So it will be just purely staff working, so they know the club, they know the noise issues. If there will be a noise issue, so they will be purely staff. They will not be let to just someone outside or something.
Thank
So
you.
they will be aware of anything, if there is any, which is we will try to insulate and follow what the engineers, and the environmental health want us to do in the sound insulation.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Councillor Kelsey?
Yeah, my answers to that would be, even as a member of staff, I would be expecting to get a quiet night's sleep in a premises, whether it's above a nightclub. Even if I worked for you, I would still be expecting to get that quiet night's sleep. But my main concern would be for the neighbours that are living in the properties up above to the sides of the exchange. I once owned a nightclub, as many people will know, and we had that same problem when the premises next to us were turned into a nightclub, and we still created a noise problem, not on purpose, but it happens. Noise travels up through party walls, etc. So I'm still very wary about that, and the fact that it is private accommodation, you may one day let that out to other people. So I do have a major concern about that. But moving on, I have another question, and that is, how long, I know you did mention it, Mr. Wright, and I'm sorry, but I did miss it. I had a noise going on here at home, and I missed a little bit of what you said about the experience that ratio bars have in the nightclub industry. What experience do they have, and in what premises, please?
I didn't say in the nightclub industry. Mr. Mahana has experience in the nighttime economy in Bournemouth. He works in Old Christchurch Road at Doner Kebab. He owns that and has done for 10 years. So he's used to dealing with, can we say, customers who have vacated licensed premises and end up in his premises trying to get food in the evening. So he's dealing with the tough end, shall I say, and dealing with it quite well. There'd not be any issues with that premises.
Slightly different from running a kebab shop to actually running an ongoing nightclub, I would think. I think the two are very, very different, but thank you for that explanation. And my final question at this stage is, what is your expected clientele? Are you planning on running a rock and roll type bar, a quiet drinking nightclub, or could you explain what your clientele are likely to be, please?
Thank you.
I think Mr. Mahana would have to answer that. But my take on it was, I was asked if it would be a particular type of venue. It will be open to all. And yes, it will be a music venue. It's not going to be rock and roll. That's as far as the discussions that we've had. It's not going to be rock and roll. The live music will be a small part of the venue, but I'm assured by the sound engineer that it doesn't matter if it's live music or recorded music, the structure will be such that it will retain both. But it's not going to be a rock bar. It's not that. It's just not big enough for that sort of thing if they're getting large bands in. So it's going to be a nightclub. It's going to be well run. It's going to be inviting. It's going to be somewhere where you can go and relax.
Mr. Wright, perhaps we could hear from Mr. Moana, because Mr. Moana will actually be running this club if he was so disposed to grant. So I think Councillor Kelsey would like to have an answer from Mr. Moana as well. Councillor Kelsey, are you content with that? Thank you, Mr.
I would like an answer, Chair, because I would like to know what sort of age ratio we're looking at for this. As it does sometimes affect the amount of noise that is made, particularly on leaving a premises, on what types of age groups and what type of people are attracted to any individual premises.
Yes, indeed. Well observed. Mr. Moana, if you'd like to answer that for Councillor Kelsey, thank you.
Yeah, the ages I'm thinking to use is like from 25 to onwards, like 45, 50s. This age where it's just, you know, people can go out, enjoy their night out and spend money, but they don't really cause much problems. The age that they make the noise and they make all this trouble, from my experience, is I don't want to take that against me, like 25 and below, which I have well experienced. All sometimes, you know, they when they get drunk, they're just trying to make trouble. So from 25 onwards, like 45, 50 people just like to go in a group, enjoy their night out, having a drink, having a chat, a little bit dance, and then they go out quietly and no trouble. So that's what the age I will be targeting. And from my experience, only not in running the shop in Old Christchurch Road, like before I used to work in nightclubs. So I have good experience in working in that environment inside and dealing with drunk customers or someone who's abusive, or so I have good experience and I'm still learning. So is anything more I will learn? Yes, I will learn.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Obviously, I'll let you back in as we go through the questioning. Councillor Anderson, do you have any questions at this moment?
No, Dave asked all of the questions I was going to.
Okay. Well, I have quite a few.
None at the moment.
None at the moment. Okay. Well, I have quite a few, and obviously I will use my ratio as I asked Councillor Kelsey if he would use his. So I'd like to go to the Dorset Police agenda item 5, where they outline the reasoning as to why they're not so content with regard to their objections. Now, one of the points that you touched on is, if we go through it, I think that'll be easier because we do want to make some sense of this. Councillor Kelsey's kindly taken us through some more seminal questions, but these are actually stated. We have the CCTV condition. Now, you've already offered a condition there for an extra CCTV in the lobby. We look to the training now every 6 months. Now, you did actually say that you didn't know why the training should be needed every 6 months. I can offer a reason why I think that I would, like the police, understand why that training would be wanted every 6 months, because of the turnover of staff. With the deepest of respect, nightclubs are known for their high turnover of staff, and therefore you would need to keep staff well trained and refreshed on a regular basis. So with regard to the training every 6 months, I can concur with the police and their thought processes around that. We look for the use of a glass of the champagne use with regard to polycarbonate, and you've agreed that. So I would like further comment, please, on why you feel that training should only be 12 months. We looked at the drug policy issue. I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, Mr. Wright, and I don't mean to be rude or disrespectful in any way, shape or form, but I think the policy which you put before the subcommittee is probably the worst explained and written policy I've ever seen, and I've been doing this for 24 years. We had mixed font sizes, we had mixed fonts, we had orders, we had exclamation marks. If you were expecting staff to read this huge long document and understand it and then apply it, I think it was a jolly tall order. So the document in itself is a mishmash of orders, and basically it cross argues with itself anyway. There are items in there which are clearly not the responsibility of your bar staff or your staff who are there. They are the responsibility of the management, and there's such a terrible crossover there. If I were a member of staff and I were applying for a job there and I looked at that policy, firstly, would I be able to understand it in the first instance? No, because it's so poorly laid out. And secondly, my requirement to understand it, where you say this must be done and that must be done, I really am extremely disappointed with regard to the standard of this policy and the application and the need for the staff to understand it, which is made quite clear at the beginning of the policy. You must understand this. You must be able to put this in train. And then the policy in itself is an absolute mishmash. I don't know if Councillor Kelsey or Councillor Anderson will agree with me on this, but this is what I feel strongly. And you are wanting us to feel that we are comfortable with the fact that your staff will be well trained, your staff will understand what's going on, and yet you put forward a policy which I had dreadful difficulty understanding. I certainly wouldn't sit down and read and understand a policy if I were attending the bar. So I think you do have some difficulty with your policy there. So with the deepest of respect, that was meant as a critical friend. That was not meant to insult in any way, shape or form.
Can you respond?
Is not intelligible. So my question is, is this the completed policy, or was it a draft for the members to look at in the first instance? Thank you.
Yeah, the policy will be built upon, will be developed, but I think the important part is the policy will not just be handed to staff. There will be induction training, so the document will be pulled apart, if you like, into its components, and training will be given to all new staff. The policy document will be a background to that, but each member of staff, and there will be all new staff, every member of staff will be trained. I've offered to do that training with Mr. Mohana. We will sit each member of staff down, they will go through induction. The document will be part of that. The Licensing Act will be part of that. How things operate with the SIA, so on and so forth. They will even be given a little test. So a multiple choice type little test. And yes, we appreciate that there is a high turnover of staff, but every new member of staff will go through the induction training. So at the start, it will be all staff going through it because they'll all be new. But as staff turn over, then new members of staff will have to do the training prior to going onto the shop floor. So I hope that it gives you some comfort. It's not just a, there you go, read that type of approach. It will be proper training. And that to a degree was why we took exception to it being by an accredited company. I'm an accredited trainer with the BII, and I teach the personal license course, so I feel competent, as do Highfield as well as the BII, for me to teach the personal license. So I feel that we can do that training, and yes, the policies are behind that, and they will be developed and firmed up.
Okay, and who indeed is the author of this policy?
Pardon?
Who is the author of this policy?
I've drafted that.
You've drafted
yes,
that.
that's my fault.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to my third question, and then I will go back to my colleagues. We look to radio connectivity between SA and staff, and I'm confused here because there's an anomaly in your reasoning, I believe. You're in a very, very noisy nightclub. Nightclubs are not quiet places. And you say people can be seen, but they can't be heard. So there's no way that anybody's going to get anybody's attention by jumping up and down or shouting. So I don't understand the reasoning behind the SIA staff having it, and everybody else has to go and find a member of the SIA staff if there's an issue. If there's an emergency issue, then they have to firstly identify an SIA staff member. They then have to go push through the crowd, whatever it might be, to find them. They've then got to shout over the noise to tell them what's going on, because they have to iterate that information to them in the first instance before the SIA staff can actually deal with the emergency or whatever matter it is. So could you again explain why you felt that all members who were pertinent to the safe management and running of the club are not going to be issued with radios? Thank you.
If it pleases the subcommittee, then we will issue them with radios. That is the simple response to that. My thinking behind it was that the premises is so small, we'll have 4 security inside on a busy evening, who will be in contact with each other. They will be spotting issues. They will be dealing with issues. And for the safety of staff, they won't get involved in any altercation. The security are there to deal with that. What I understood from the police reference was that radios will be given to staff, so they can raise any concerns or issues, maybe of drug dealing that they've spotted or something like that. Not an emergency situation. The SIA are there to deal with that, and I'm sure they will. So I don't mean to confuse, and if it pleases the committee, then yes, radios will be given to staff, but they will only be, what, 3 meters away, probably. You know, there are quite a lot of door staff inside.
Okay,
but if it pleases the committee, by all means, we will add that as a condition of license.
Okay, I think you and I will have to differ on our understanding of that, but you've made an offer of a condition where we so disposed to grant, so the subcommittee will obviously consider that. So thank you very much, Mr. Wright, in this instance. So back now to Councillor Anderson or Councillor Kelsey for any further questioning. Councillor Kelsey?
Yes, please, Chair, if I may. I just have another one. Mr. Wright, you stated that the opening times would be 2200 to 0500, but you were prepared to go back to 0300 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Is that correct?
Yes, I did offer that to the police as part of the mediation. I didn't get a formal response to that request. I'm quite happy, and I'm sure Mr. Mahano is quite happy to make that offer to the committee.
My reason for asking the question is that in your application, in all of the sections, you're stating 2100 hours opening time.
You are indeed.
That's the opening time.
And that's the times that you have for alcohol, for music, etc., etc. So
yeah,
are you saying you wish to amend all of those times now?
We wanted to operate as per the application from 2100 to 0500.
Okay.
I did offer 2200. I apologise. 2200 to 0500. I didn't get a response to that. I then see in the report from the police that they would be happy to for 0300. But nothing was agreed. We didn't actually mediate that as a position. So I've entered this hearing today with the application as originally submitted is 2100 to 0500. And the flexibility to which I referred in my submission will give the company that flexibility to shut when they want, open when they want, within the terms of the license. But I can make the offer, we can make the offer that we will reduce the hours to 2200 to 0300 on Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays, and Mondays, except for Bank Holiday Sunday, if I may add that. And then for 0500 on Fridays and Saturdays and Wednesdays.
Okay, I hope we all have that. Are there any?
Thank you for that, Chair.
Any further supplementary on that, Councillor Kelsey?
No, I'm fine for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Going back, thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Anderson, I'm so sorry. Did you want to come in? No, we were shooting your fox, I'm sure. So forgive us. We looked to your capacious policy. I'd be grateful if you could find the drugs policy. I did read it. I did find it and read it, but I'd be grateful if you could find me the page for another question, Mr. Wright, while I ask this one. irresponsible promotions. Ratio Bars Limited do not carry out promotions. But then within it, you go and you talk about promotions. So I'm confused. Do you or do you not? I mean, promotion is a promotion. You talk about safe promotions, but then your first caveat is you don't have them at all. And then you talk about ones which are safe, and you go into great detail about the ABF limits, etc. So could you please confirm whether or not you do or you do not do promotions? Or
There will be no
promotions. You not
promotions.
intend to.
Yeah, there are no promotions.
Okay, so you'll need to tidy up some of that verbiage then in the policy. Could you please also take me to give me the page for your drug policy, because it is very copious long.
I don't have it in front of me. I've only got it on my PC.
Yeah, well, I'm trawling through it too. Well, anybody who finds it, I'd like to go through it, please. Statement of policy on drugs. I have found it. It's page 16, everybody, for the report, if that's helpful.
Oh, you've got it.
Yes, page 16, that's correct. Now you can see what I mean by the size 10 Calibri font going probably to size 9 and then jumping up to size 14. It's not an easy read, and I would have thought that a drugs policy, if anything, would have been in a larger font to have drawn attention to it. So this is the drugs policy.
There will be there is a drugs policy in there, but it was stated that there is no drugs policy, and then there will be training on the drugs policy specific to this venue about how to spot people who are taking drugs, who are dealing drugs.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Thank you, Mr. Wright. My concern is that I've seen policies and I've seen the drug policy part of these policy for clubs, and I've never seen one quite like this. There is a set policy which is usually extrapolated, which can be used, but this doesn't seem to have any form or reason. I wonder how this was put together. You are the author of this again, but again, it's not an easy read. There are some issues here which are certainly not clear. So if this was the policy that the police did see, or indeed there was no policy beforehand, I'm still not content that this policy covers everything in a clarity that's required for the seriousness of its application. So I was just wondering, where did you actually extrapolate this from? Was this something you've sat down and gone through yourself? Because I genuinely believe this is not a helpful piece of the document and it could well be improved. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
We will improve that policy, or I will improve that policy in conjunction with Mr. Mohana.
Okay, I'd like, Councillor Kelsey, could I please ask, with your vast knowledge and background on this, could you perhaps give comment as to your thoughts with regard to the clarity of this policy? There are headings and then there are some text, but I read it through. I didn't feel supported or assured. I wondered if I could have your comments.
I think, Chair, in my opinion, it's a very convoluted, very complicated looking policy, and it could have been made a lot simpler for people to understand. Now, I know Mr. Wright is a very, very, very experienced man, and I'm sure that his intentions to this are absolutely spot on. It may well be that, bearing in mind the problems of the previous premises here, that he has tried to be over zealous in his approach on this to make it a bit more complicated than what it really needed to be. So I would have thought that, in my opinion, I actually think this application is slightly premature, in that there is so much of it that is not ready really to come to this committee at this moment in time to give us a good idea of what's going to happen. We don't have the sound report in full yet. The premises is not fitted out in full yet. The drugs policy is not laid out in a readable manner for anyone to understand. But I do think the gist of it is good. But I think you're right, Chair. In my opinion, I think the drugs part of this is very, very complicated for any normal person to understand at the moment.
Thank you very much. You'll forgive us, Mr. Wright, but we are getting down to drilling right down into the information that you've given us, which is only fair and right. And you've been very accommodating and very assistive in helping the subcommittee with your answers. But it is necessary for us to go right into the detail of all the information in front of us. I don't have any further questions at this moment in time, except just a quick expo as to your metal detector arch. Now, is that something which you intend to put in situ? Was that an offered condition, or I wasn't quite clear as to the situation there?
Yes, it is.
Oh, the answer is yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is in the conditions. May I respond to what was just said, if that's okay?
If you so wish, yes, of course. Feel free. You have the floor.
Sorry, I'll put my hand down. When you say that the application is premature, part of the reasoning, and I'll be perfectly blunt, is that there is a lot of investment, as you will all know, to getting a nightclub off the ground and then maintaining that nightclub. Ratio Bars would like the comfort to know that this committee have granted the license. They will invest, and I know it's chicken and egg, and I'm sure you're coming at it from a completely different viewpoint, but they will invest tens of thousands of pounds in this business, if not more. And the comfort of the license, duly conditioned to prevent their premises opening, will give them the comfort that they have a license when they've spent tens of thousands of pounds to get this venue up and running, particularly in the current climate. Premises are closing left, right and centre. So for them to invest at this time, this will give them the comfort. And that's part of, when you're saying it's premature, that's part of the reasoning for putting the application in.
Yes, indeed. I think there's a difference between premature and incomplete. I think Councillor Kelsey, yes, of course, please come back.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Wright, for that explanation. And you're right, we do have to look at it from a slightly different perspective, because it may well be very good that your client has offered all of these conditions, etc., and we may say, yes, we'll give you a license. Your client may then sell the property tomorrow before the refurb work is completed, and we would not have a leg to stand on, which is why myself, I would prefer to see a premises finished and ready to go, so that we can have the assurance that that premises is up to the standards that we, as BCP Licensing Committee, would expect to be there for us.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. And these are all these are very salient points, all put forward, and they will all go in the mix as to with regard to our deliberations. So there is no decision process here as we're moving forward, but we are kicking up everything that needs to be considered as we go through it. So it's not colouring the decision, but it is iterating where we will be when we come to our discussions. Thank you very much, Councillor Kelsey. That's extremely helpful. And Mr. Wright, thank you for your contributions. So moving on then, we will go back. If there are no further questions from members for our applicant. Now, Sergeant Gosling, you said that Mrs. Rosales would take the helm here. So Mrs. Rosales, do you have any questions for Mr. Wright? Thank you.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, none at the moment. And Mr. Hill, any questions for Mr. Wright?
I do, Chair. Thank you.
So thank you. Fire away.
First of all, apologies for not being at the meeting for about 5 minutes. My internet router broke, so I was offline for quite a while, and
you're here now.
frantically trying to get it all working, but it's all up together again. I do have my phone on standby as well, so if it does indeed happen again, then hopefully I should be able to log on. So thanks, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Mahana, for your thanks, Steve, for your presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mahana, as well. Just got a couple of questions, Steve. So a number of my questions in relation to noise have actually already been raised by Councillor Kelsey. I've got very much the same concerns in terms of the intentions for the accommodation above. I think, Mr. Wright, you said that that the intention is for staff members to use the accommodation. I think, in my experience, even though they're staff members, they're still entitled to be able to have a good night's sleep. I think, in my experience as well, staff members always find it very difficult to complain about their employer because of fear of losing their jobs. So I think we can't rely on the fact just because they're staff members, then they, if there's a problem, they're going to complain to the employer. They probably won't because of fear of losing their job. So that's something we do need to consider. I think a very valid point, which was again raised by Councillor Kelsey, is I disagree with your findings, Mr. Wright, with regards to that there aren't many sensitive receptors nearby. There are a number of sensitive receptors nearby, and I hopefully in my submission, I'll be going into quite a bit of detail in terms of the history we have with this particular venue and the impact it's had on local residents. I think the noise survey that you refer to, yeah, again, I'll be spending quite a bit of time covering that on my. With
respect, I know you're eager to put forward your presentation, but did you actually have a specific question for Mr. Wright?
Yeah,
he's waiting with bated breath there for your question.
Okay, so first of all, the private accommodation above. So will there be would you be prepared to offer a condition in relation to the private accommodation cannot be used for, it can only be used for staff members, cannot be actually used for general sort of let to members of the public?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm actually, Mr. Wright, before you answer, Mr. Wright, thank you. Before you answer that, I think Mrs. Cole, could we have some guidance as to whether that's legally credible? I'm not certain there. Could you guide us?
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's sure on that point. Or if you can't guide us, could you please look into that for us and perhaps give us an answer by the time we're ready to deliberate as to whether that is something which we could actually apply as a condition?
I suppose I would need to look at what the plan of the plan of the premises and the license as to whether it's one's connected with the others. At the moment, I just know it as private accommodation, not as part of the application. So
we wouldn't want to fetter any discretions. That was all my concern was there. So
I think
you be able to give us an answer there at a later stage, Mr. Wright.
It is private accommodation. You're right. But it's in the gift of Mr. Mahana because part of the lease actually covers the flats above, which he has emptied. All the residents who were above are now no longer.
Can I speak? Can I speak?
Yes, of course.
The flats above, we took the building on end of October this year. So it's nearly like 1 month and something, okay? That's with us. The building was, yes, big problems there. Drug dealing we found there and drug dealers and these, and it took us quite time to get rid of these and to clean the building. Even one of the police guys, they know that we clean the building and they are happy, which we know them, we talk to them on the street. So the building is not gonna be, we're not gonna, if we need to let out to anyone that we don't know, he's not like in connection, because we don't want any trouble. At the end of the day, there is a nightclub gonna be underneath, and there is accommodation gonna be up. If someone who's working, he's gonna stay there. But we will not be advertising. We will not be getting anyone in that we don't know inside, like accommodation.
Okay, so the question
is going to be advertised.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Mwana, isn't it? I do need to get your pronunciation of your name correct, Mr. Mwana. So the question that was put by Mr. Hill with regard to condition, are you able to give us an answer there?
I can say that will not be put any advertisement and will not be put in any like one from the street asking for accommodation.
I think the question was, could you condition it so that the accommodation only be used for staff working at the nightclub? I think that was the specific question. So are you able to answer that, or what is your response to that?
Yeah, we can do that, no problem.
That's
yes, we can put it as a condition.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I think just to sort of, I think we run the risk of sort of under-evaluating the potential for exposure to staff above as well, because I think I think this venue as well, there's a number of residential properties that are structurally connected to this venue that aren't directly above. So,
okay, Mr. Hill, what I'm going to do is I'm feeling you're going to your submission here, and we do need to move on. And I think that you do have any questions with regard to that, you can raise them in your submission, because I think we are on that level now. We do need to move forward, and I think we have the gist of where you're coming from on that. So we have
no worries, thank you.
Thank you very much. We have an extra condition put forward should we be so disposed to grant. Mrs. Jardim, do you have any questions for Mr. Wright?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on then to, everybody will get their opportunity to say exactly what they need to and ask any questions they need to before the end of this hearing. It may not be in the correct format, but everybody will have that opportunity. So we move now to our responsible authorities to make their representations, and Mrs. Rosales, you're speaking on behalf of Dorset Police. So Mrs. Rosales, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Further to our objection on behalf of Dorset Police, which was submitted previously by Sergeant Gosling, I don't intend to take up any more of your time by repeating the contents of the supplementary submission, so I will keep it short. Dorset Police consistently aims to support operators with their premises license application, and this is demonstrated by the communication between myself, the applicant, and the representative, Mr. Wright, over a lengthy period of time prior to the submission of this application. I have made it clear at an early stage that Dorset Police would not be supportive of the operating hours proposed in this application, and have advised them to reduce the operating hours when submitting the final application. The applicant chose to disregard this advice and have chosen to apply for extended hours. Operating a premises which can consistently promote the licensing objectives for the hours that are proposed would be extremely challenging for the most experienced operator. Whilst we accept that the operator has experience of operating food outlets in Bournemouth Town Centre, we are concerned that they may be overwhelmed by the challenges they are likely to experience should they operate until 5 o'clock in the morning, and this will result in a premises that has a detrimental impact on the community. Dorset Police are of the view that operating until 3 a.m. would provide them with a far greater opportunity of delivering a provision which will enhance the area and not risk increasing the demand on public services, including police, who are working hard to meet existing demands in a nighttime economy. Whilst matters of a fiscal nature will generally not be considered by the members of this subcommittee, we believe that these operating hours will ensure that the premises remain viable to the current operator. I would like to hand this over to Sergeant Gosling if he has anything else to add. But if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to provide you with answers if I can.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosales. Sergeant Gosling, did you want to come in and add anything or confirm anything? Would be great. Thank you.
Yes, I will. I hadn't planned to, as you're aware, Chair. But unfortunately, I think throughout this this hearing so far, I think my concerns have actually increased. Best laid plans, if you like. I am somewhat concerned by the fact that Mr. Wright certainly intimated that whilst it's naturally not a concern for licensed premises in regards to levels of police resources, but my understanding from his submission was that the operator would look after the bar and the area immediately near to the bar, but it could not be their responsibility beyond that. Naturally, I would ask the committee to consider the likely effect on people being far greater during the early hours of the morning, and that certainly does worry me, because I do expect that to be mitigated as best as possible by licensees. I think as well, in respect of the mediation that has taken place, hasn't taken place, I think we've demonstrated today the purpose of, or the benefit of, doing so in writing, because certainly some of the undertakings provided in person to Louise and Vanessa, they've certainly been retracted to varying degrees, I think, in order to try and gain our approval, if you like. And that's certainly around the areas such as security, my understanding being that there was originally offered 6 security at all times, but I think that was perhaps more of an undertaking rather than a condition, and I think we need to be clear as to what's being offered as undertakings and actually what's being offered as conditions.
Okay, let me stop you there, Sergeant Gosling.
Yep.
That's actually a question. So
no, it's not a question. I think
it's a statement.
It's a statement. Yeah,
Thank
certainly
you
a
very
statement.
Thank you.
Because
Okay.
I think it is just something I think for the committee to consider, because there is certainly a mixture within the documentation of conditions and assurances, and naturally assurances are exactly that, and are very, very difficult, if not impossible, for us to enforce, as I'm sure Mrs. Cole will confirm. In respect of the training, I'm glad that you raised that, Chair, because I think the 6 months not only allows for that regular training, but also, as Mr. Wright actually highlighted himself, there will be issues that do emerge. We do find that in the nighttime economy, there are different trends, different concerns. So it might be, for example, drink spiking or particular types of drugs. And I do expect premises to adapt quite quickly to that. So having the assurance of being able to deliver that training on a more regular basis, as well as informal training that will occur as we would expect as well during staff briefings. That's certainly something that's really important to us, as is the training. So the delivery of training by competent people, again, that's something that is very, very difficult for us to quantify. So somebody may demonstrate themselves to be competent, but they might not be competent to deliver the training, and that's why qualifications is well regarded as, and well in every field, as being something that is acceptable and something that we can work with on an enforcement basis. The lack of handheld radios, again, I'm glad for your attention to this detail, Chair. I've worked in the nighttime economy. I understand the value of handheld radio. They're relatively inexpensive, but they do give the assurance to the staff that they'll be supported, and they really, the value is beyond the cost. It's far beyond the cost, and we're looking at safety issues, and I would have expected that to have been included in the proposal and not to be not rejected, but to be pushed back. The upstairs accommodation, I think, again, we've been offered verbally that would not be used for accommodation, and then we're finding out today that it may potentially be used for accommodation. It's a massive concern, not only for noise that, you know, obviously is under the that's something that will be picked up by Mr. Hill, but it's also who will be occupying these premises, and we've had issues in the past. It is documented in the paperwork, and I won't go to it into it in any more detail. I think that's about it really from me. I've got a number of other small issues, but I think I want to keep it to the pertinent points, many of which have already been raised by the members. And at this point, I'm really not comfortable at all with a number of the omissions that are in place with this license application as it stands. And I apologise, I've jumped around a little bit there, but this is very impromptu based on some of the information that's been passed to us today.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. And that's absolutely fine, because these hearings, whatever pace they take, it's just really important that those questions are asked. And Mr. Wright, by default, is given that opportunity to answer those questions. So it's a quid pro quo, because if he's not given the opportunity, then he's not able to explain things, and that would be unfair to Mr. Wright. So very happy that you do bring questions in as and when you feel that they are pertinent, and they'll be considered by the subcommittee. So Mrs. Rosales, do you have anything further to add?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we have, unless there's anything further, those two tiny points you wanted to put in, Sergeant Gosling, we're very happy to hear them, although they can come at another stage, perhaps in your summary, if you wanted to pop them in summary. Yes?
I'll leave the summary to Vanessa.
Okay.
I'm trying to leave as much as I can to Vanessa, so I've got nothing further to add.
We're seeing the trend. We're seeing the trend, but everybody can have the opportunity. If something you wanted to add after Mrs. Rosales had finished, that's absolutely fine. And in the same way with Mr. Wright, of course, Mr. Moana will have every opportunity to speak as well. So the questions then of the responsible authorities. Members, we have the floor. Councillor Kelsey?
None right at this time, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will be going back to Mr. Hill, but I'm going to take you separately. I haven't forgotten you, Mr. Hill, don't worry. I don't like to meld the two because you're two really distinct disciplines. So it keeps it fresh in the minds of the subcommittee, who I've got a lot to think about, okay? Councillor Anderson, do you have any questions for the responsible authorities, please?
None at the moment.
Okay, I have one question. It was Mr. Wright did say that he was disappointed that there was no opportunity for mitigation. So, and then we hear from the police that there were some mitigations. So I was just wondering what actually did take part, what was offered and what did happen, so we can better understand the process. Thank you. Either Mrs. Rosales or Sergeant Gosling. Thank you.
Chair, I was consulted by the applicant as stated previously, I think way before they submitted the application. I was approached by Mr. Mohana's brother, who informed me that they are taken on the premises. And I did raise the concern that, you know, he did say that it's going to be 5 o'clock up until 5 o'clock. And, you know, that conversation led to me having that conversation with Mr. Mohana himself, who confirmed that they will propose the 5 o'clock. And I did state that we're not going to be able to support the 5 o'clock. Because I know as a licensing officer in Bournemouth area, in the town centre, I know it's going to cause a lot of trouble. And so I did advise them that having 5 o'clock operating times is not going to be viable. So that's the conversation. And I did have conversation with Mr. Wright as well. So they are aware of our concerns.
So that was, in fact, a non-negotiable issue. Okay, yeah. I understand. So it was not capable of mitigation. I understand. So perhaps that's what Mr. Wright meant with regard to that. But Mr. Wright can perhaps make a note and perhaps explain that in your summary, Mr. Wright. That would be useful for us to understand that. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, thank you for that. So then we have questions of our responsible authorities. Mr. Wright, do you have any questions? Any further questions?
Yes, I do, Chair. Are the police saying that they are happy for the premises to operate until 0300 hours without breaching the licensing objectives or breaching the license?
Okay, are the police, are you happy, are you content that 300 operating hours, that would be across the board 7 days a week, Mr. Wright?
If that's what the police have intimated in their additional information.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm asking if they are happy and comfortable that we could operate until 0300 hours, and they would be happy with that.
Thank you.
And we will promote the licensing objectives and control the premises.
Mrs. Rosales or Sergeant Gosling? I'm happy to hear from either.
We would be happy with that if the conditions, if the proposed conditions are in place. So I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that I'm seeing in there a bit of an umbrella question. I don't think what's being said is that all the other matters will fall away. I think it's just with the specific hours that are relevant there. All the other matters, obviously, we need to discuss further and be content. So it's just, is that right, Mrs. Rosales? Because I wouldn't want.
Yeah, if I could come in on that, if I could come in on that, Chair.
Yeah.
I think, you know, Mr. Wright is quite right to get some clarity on that, because I think some of the issues that have been raised today have given rise, if you like, to almost more concern. Certainly in relation to the use of the upstairs space. I think I've got concerns around the statement around the responsibility of the wider community following the impact of certainly dispersal from this premises, and also some safety concerns, which I think all of these would need ironing out significantly, and as well as obviously the concerns of Mr. Hill, before I would be content with it. So whilst the document, Mr. Wright, is absolutely quite clear, and he's quite correct to say that the document is generally in support of an 0300 finish, but that would be subject to ironing out all of the concerns that we have.
Yes, so they don't naturally fall away. Thank you for that clarity. No. Thank you. Do you have, so carrying on then, Mr. Wright, coming back to you with regard to your questions.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions? Yes.
Yeah, only one more question, really, to Sergeant Gosling. I made the offer to come to Bournemouth Police Station with Mr. Mohana and sit down with you and go through all of this. But that offer was declined, and I think we could have resolved a lot of these issues that you're now raising, and you've raised in your supplementary information. I just wondered why you didn't want to sit down with us to go through all of this.
Okay, that's Chair. Are you happy to answer that?
Yes, of course, Sergeant Gosling. Please go ahead.
I think, without wishing to sound too blunt, I think your perception of what can be resolved in a meeting is perhaps different to what I perceive that can be resolved in a meeting. I certainly operate better with regards to written communication, and it's really pertinent, I think, for us to ensure that what's being offered, you know, the Licensing Act is quite simple in that, you know, if it's detailed in the conditions, then it's enforceable. So much of what we've discussed today, and so much of what was discussed between Vanessa, yourself, the applicant, and Louise as well, conversations are exactly that. So actually it's really clear and important, in my opinion, to actually get those assurances in the form of enforceable conditions. And it's nothing personal to anybody here, including yourself, Mr. Wright, and Mr. Mohana, but it's the approach that we take with everybody, where mediation generally takes place in writing, where we can be absolutely crystal clear on what's being offered, and if there's any concerns with that, then we return. And all of the points that I've had concerns about are all detailed in the, I think it made it as far as 12 pages, possibly one of the longest ones I've ever done. And my approach is always to do it in a clear and concise document for the attention of everybody, so that there is an absolutely no surprises approach to our concerns. So we've listed the concerns as best as possible, and it would be then down to the applicant to mitigate those concerns to the satisfaction of the committee or ourselves. And on this occasion, we've been unable to be satisfied with any additional offers made, and hence why it's within the gift of the members now to take it forward and make that decision.
Thank you very much. I think the more thorough data stream professional approach is something which can be materially relied on at a later stage. So I think that is the reasoning behind Sergeant Gosling's mitigation. But thank you so much for raising that, Mr. Wright. It's very important that we understand your feelings with regard to that process. Are there any further questions, Mr. Wright?
A statement, if I may.
You can make your statement. You can, if I prefer, if we can move on to statements, put that in your summary. Okay,
I'll
that's
ask the question.
Okay.
So Dorset Police do not want to sit down in a room, talk about the issues and the concerns they have that can then be confirmed by the way of correspondence to say, right, following our meeting, we've agreed X, Y, and Z. Are you happy with these? I will put them to the licensing authority. Is that not a better way of speaking to applicants face to face?
I'm going to intervene here because I think we're talking about semantics with the deepest of respect. The Dorset Police have an accepted method which they've adopted, which has been extremely successful over many, many years. And it may be there's just been a bit of a breakdown of communication. It may be that perhaps that could have been iterated to you at an earlier stage. But I feel we've got to where we are. We've got all the information in front of us that is pertinent. So I think the semantics of perhaps how that came out is not for today's questioning. But thank you for putting the question anyway. I don't know if Sergeant Gosling wants to add to that, but I do want to move forward with our hearing. Sergeant Gosling?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wright, do you have any further questions?
No, Chair. No.
Okay, thank you. 1 moment, please. Okay. So I'm now going to move to Mrs. Jardim. Do you have any questions?
I don't, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. 1 moment, please. Okay. Mr. Hill, now your opportunity as responsible authority to put forward your submission. Thank you for your patience in waiting.
Thank you. So thank you, Chair. So we find ourselves in front of this committee expressing concern about a venue which has quite a checkered past with this department. But let me start my submission by saying that in evaluating the impact of this new business, I have actually considered the application on its own merits. I've considered the history of the operator, the conditions offered by the operator, as well as the acoustic reports which the operator commissioned to support his application, of which I received them on Monday. However, before I can evaluate the impact of a business on the local residents, I need to consider the impact the previous business had on the local residents, as in my view, unfortunately, this application offers nothing more than the previous business apart from simply a change of operator and a change of business name. This application is once again for a nightclub, which is licensed until 5 a.m., 7 days a week. A nightclub, as we're all aware, that is normally characterized by loud music, much of which tends to be in the lower frequency range or bass music, as we commonly know it. The applicant has provided no evidence to satisfy our concerns that residents in close proximity will not be affected by noise. This is a premises that's located in an area which has actually changed quite significantly in the last 2 years when it closed before. And therefore, we really need to consider that this new venue is now the agent of change in the area. So I would like to be respectful of the time of this committee and therefore do not want to go over every single detail regarding the history of this premises. But the following key information must be brought to the attention of the committee so that you, as committee members, can make an informed decision regarding the potential for the significant disturbance to local residents should this premises be granted a premises license in its current format. As this application leaves me no option but to assume that without significant changes to the business, the likelihood is that we will simply have a repeat of the previous concerns we had with the previous business. So the following key matters need to be brought to the attention of the committee. In 2016, we, the environmental health team, started receiving complaints from residents in close proximity to the former nightclub, which this application seeks to replace. The complaints related to noise from loud music from the venue and from patrons in front of the venue, affecting residents in their properties. These complaints continued despite a number of discussions and interventions with the business operators at the time. As a result, officers from the council installed noise monitoring equipment and in June 2017 obtained objective evidence of the existence of a statutory noise nuisance and served a noise abatement notice on the then operators at the time. Legal advice was sought by the operators. The evidence was duly disclosed to the solicitor acting on behalf of the venue, and the notice was not appealed. So we were then given assurances by the operators at the time that there would be an immediate improvement. So despite the efforts of the operator, despite these assurances, we still continue to receive noise complaints. In July 2017, two senior environmental health officers, when undertaking out-of-hours noise monitoring, observed that the noise music was clearly audible when stood opposite to the venue. The officers commented that the lyrics of the songs were clearly heard from their survey location, and once again, bass noise was clearly evident. The colleagues met with the operators, determined that there was no sound limiter fitted in the venue, and at the time identified various noise transmission pathways in the venue.
Mr.
Now,
Hill,
yeah.
Whilst I'm grateful for the history of what's happened before, could you explain the relevance as to this particular application? Because we're in a fit of flux, aren't we? We were not where we were then. We're actually looking to
Absolutely.
where we could be. So what's the if there's a relevance, I'd be grateful if you could come to it. Thank you.
So what I'm trying to demonstrate, Chair, is that they're complex noise issues relating to this premises.
I understand.
I'd like to take this opportunity to point out that the impact it's had on the local residents as well as resources within the environmental health team. What I will do, though, is I'll summarize some of the key points then. So when we met with the operators, we determined that no sound limiter was in use in the venue. We identified various noise transmission pathways in the venue, and the purpose of the meeting was to advise the operators of the intention to review the premises license. Now, simply because they hadn't complied with the noise abatement notice. We were then provided assurances by the operator that there would be an improvement, and there was still no improvement. So noise monitoring equipment was then once again installed in the property. Once again, noise was measured, and further noise abatement notice was served. The environmental health officer at the time then took the decision to review the premises license. We simply felt that due to the ongoing complaints about noise from this venue and patrons outside, which was evidenced by the team, that the most appropriate action would be request a hearing to revoke or to suspend the license until such time as corrective actions can be taken. Now, this is a key point. At the time, we felt that the venue should carry out a detailed acoustic assessment to demonstrate that the premises is suitable to provide such entertainment without disturbing nearby residents. And the assessment with any recommendations shall be submitted to the environmental health team for written approval, as well as the recommended works be carried out in accordance with the assessment and maintained thereafter. There were a few other conditions asked for, however, I'm not going to go into much detail about those, other than adding that we'd also requested that an installation of a lobbied doorway in order to reduce the amount of breakout noise. Now, the environmental health team did indeed attend the licensing board in 2018, and the board's decision was to add a condition requiring that they have a noise limit, that the premises have a noise limiter in place. This is set to the level agreed with the environmental health department, and also an amendment that an amendment to the conditions that the doors in the lobby were not to be wedged open. And that there's always one set of doors that are closed at all times. Now, it should be noted that this applicant hasn't even offered these as conditions. So they've made no reference in their conditions to the use of a noise limiter, and they've made no reference to the use of a lobby doorway arrangement. It's granted that in the supplementary information, they have added that. However, I would have preferred to see that as a condition, because that is a key, that's a key measure that can be implemented to control noise. Despite this, we still continue to receive a number of complaints about the venue. I myself actually visited the venue. I accompanied the case officer at the time, as he needed some specialist advice. When I did the visit to the complainant's property, we once again determined it was a statutory noise nuisance. We also saw that there were a number of problems with the premises in terms of various noise transmission pathways. The noise limiter was not even being used. However, this was the previous operator, but there were various noise transmission pathways. We then decided that significant works had to be undertaken in order to control noise to the residents who were to the properties that are structurally connected to this venue. Now, there are a number of properties that are inhabited by residents that are structurally connected to this venue. And I think it's worth pointing out at this point that I think we shouldn't just assume that just because the property above is going to be used by this operator and the properties at the side may be used by this operator. There are a number of other properties that are structurally connected to this venue, which we know are inhabited by residents who in the past have expressed concern to us about noise. So I think it's worth pointing that out, that, you know, there are a number of properties, and also I think, as Councillor Carsey pointed out, there are a number of venues, residential properties adjacent to this venue, which are quite badly impacted by noise, particularly bass noise. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, members, on the 28th of January 2020, Dorset Police submitted an application to revoke the premises licence, and this was based on their concerns on the grounds of the licensing objective being undermined in relation to the prevention of crime and disorder and public safety. Now, this was the previous operator. However, I thought I would just add this just for context, really. So, Chair, I think you may be asking, why have I drawn your attention to matters which clearly the applicant has no control over? They've simply purchased the property with a legacy of problems, and are likely to be keen to demonstrate to us that they can do it differently this time round. However, what I have tried to point out is that there are really complex noise problems surrounding this venue, and currently I'm unable to satisfy myself that these have been or indeed will be suitably addressed in the future. What I'd like to do is I'd like to really just take a little bit more of your time and just to go into a little bit more detail about the two acoustic reports that were received. And I believe that they've both been provided to you for your perusal. So the reports were prepared by JTech Environmental, forms two parts, the preliminary noise survey and the sound insulation report, both of which, as I say, have been provided for you to view prior to the hearing. Now, I hope to provide a more detailed evaluation of the reports, so these can be considered, particularly in relation to the evaluation of the existing noise climate and the proposed noise mitigation works. Now, the sound insulation testing report outlined the process of measuring how much noise the building element, such as the wall or floor, stops from travelling through to a neighbouring property. The report very rightly outlined the testing methodology followed and reported the findings. The report further then goes on to say that noise was generated in the source room by placing an active loudspeaker, which produces a steady spectrum of pink noise in an external corner of the room, and the noise level was then measured in both the source room and the receiver room. So effectively, a speaker was placed in the source room, and they played a sound. They measured it in the receiver room, and then they could then do a calculation how suitable the noise attenuation was. The noise attenuation is that's provided by the fabric of the building. Now, the measurements were taken at 1/3 octave bands intervals from 100 to 3,150 hertz.
Mr. Hill, please, Mr. Hill.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Forgive us. We are not technical experts. We
Absolutely.
do need an idiot speak, and also members of the public who may listen to the recording will want to understand better as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what I was hoping to do was to follow that up with a bit more of a technical detail about that. So they were taken in interval bands between 100 to 3,150 hertz. So first of all, this is actually quite a key point, because typically what we tend to find is bass noise, which is the noise that most people tend to be disturbed by, presents itself at 63 hertz. So I think, to put it in layman's terms, the acoustic consultant didn't even measure the bass noise. So he started measuring at 100 hertz. So we'd be more concerned about noise in the 63 and 125 hertz. So it did capture the data at 125 hertz. However, no measurements were taken at the frequency band of interest. And that's a discussion I had with the acoustic consultant yesterday. An agreement was reached that further acoustic surveys would be undertaken, and indeed they would do that. So I think the takeaway message from that is, a big concern I've got is the bass noise was not measured effectively. I did have another point with regards to pink noise. I'm not going to go too much into detail about that, because I'd like to take on board. It may be quite technical in nature, and may not be relevant. So the preliminary noise report does make a number of references to noise from music. However, the survey did not include an evaluation of bass noise. Again, if we look at pages 11 and 13 of the sound insulation testing report, where they did actually report their findings, we can clearly see in the corresponding diagrams that have been provided to us how poor the existing fabric is at attenuating lower frequency noise. So effectively, the noise report effectively confirmed what we all knew. In terms of the fabric is pretty poor at controlling bass noise, and this is the noise which all the complaints have been received about. Now, so as I say, fortunately, I did speak to the acoustic consultant yesterday, who I had a number of questions with regards to this acoustic report. I did, however, speak to the acoustic consultant yesterday, who certainly managed to allay some of my fears in terms of the way the survey was done. There were a few more issues that did, however, become evident. One of them was that the acoustic consultant was only approached in the beginning of December to carry out the survey.
Mr. Hill, could I just stop you there?
Yes.
Very detailed report as always from your good self. Thank you very much. But actually, I'm beginning to be so minded to consider a proposal. And I will iterate as to why, and I believe that my colleagues will support me in this. This is an application which isn't ready. This application before us is a mishmash of information. Now, one of the things which any subcommittee would require to have in front of it is something they understand, okay? We are experienced members of licensing, we are used to this type of thing, but we still need executive summaries, of which there are absolutely none, and that is from all parties, so that we have a good grasp and understanding of what's being put before us. We are not doing you a service by not understanding what you're asking of us, okay? So because of that, and because of these reports, which we're having reports saying, let's have this report, let's have that report, I am going to ask my colleagues if they were so minded for us to adjourn this meeting until such time as we have an application in front of us which we can actually do justice to, and all parties can contribute. I must say that I believe that the police have been very clear in their application and in their presentation. With the deepest of respect, Mr. Hill, your enthusiasm, bringing in lots and lots of new information. I know that you'll be reacting very much to what Mr. Wright has put in front of us today, but I do need further clarity. I think the subcommittee certainly need further clarity from the applicant and from your good self, Mr. Hill. You almost work in tandem, one setting the other off, so neither to blame, okay? So I just put to Councillor Kelsey and Councillor Anderson, I would like to propose an adjournment. What are your thoughts, Councillor Kelsey?
Yes, Chairman, I think, as I said in my questions to Mr. Wright earlier when I was speaking, I do think this is a very premature report. But Chairman, having said that, may I have permission to ask Mr. Hill a question, please?
Of course.
Mr. Hill, since the premises has been closed, would you say that the area, the amenity of the area to local residents has vastly improved?
We've had no noise complaints. So many of I've not heard from many of the residents who complained in the past for 2 years. Now I'm not to say they haven't moved on, but I attended a hearing about a month ago in relation to another venue, and we get quite a lot of complaints in the area about licensed venues. We have not had complaints on from the Triangle for quite a while. So I hope that answers your question. So since this venue is closed, we've had no complaints whatsoever about noise. There's been a number of, the area's changed. We've had two restaurants.
I think we'll just contain it to the answering that particular question. I think it's what Kelsey was looking for. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
I think that's answered my questions on that. Thank you, Chairman. But as I said earlier, I do think that looking at the pictures of the premises that we were sent, it was sent to us with no roofing, just looking at the struts in the roof, we could see it. There's no way of knowing what noise is going to be done after that is all fixed. And I do think that a noise report should be sent when the premises is ready to open, not halfway through building the premises. We should be clear in our minds that we know that any measures put in place are there for the protection of the public. And the one part that I thought was missing from the sound report is background noise from outside of the building. Now, we know they're going to have a smoking area outside. There was nothing taken into account from any noise created by that, apart from the fact that someone from the premises is going to monitor the noise. Now, I'm sorry, but in my professional opinion and my years and years of experience in the nighttime economy, it's very difficult to control noise from people outside when they've been drinking and when they're smoking. But I do think, Chairman, that your proposal for an adjournment is a very, very sensible proposal to enable all parties to get to the details of the sound reports. We know they were only submitted this week, and I'm sure Environmental Health have not had time to fully talk about those and discuss them with other people. And I'm sure that Mr. Wright and his client have listened to what we've all had to say this morning and may feel that they can come back with a much more comprehensive application in the very near future. I don't think it would take them that long to do. And maybe they can have more consultation with the police, particularly around the opening times. I think they drastically need looking at. 5 o'clock is far too late on a weekday, what I call a weekday, Monday to Thursday night, for anything around that area. We have to bear in mind people need to get up. There are lots of children living in that area now. We have to bear in mind their ability to get up and go to school in the morning. And I think that is something that any responsible licence holder would want to take into account. So I would be fully in support of going for an adjournment, Chair. Sorry for my rambling.
That's extremely helpful, and the background information always helpful. Councillor Anderson, your thoughts?
Happy for the adjournment. Again, living in a student area, I wouldn't necessarily say the problem comes from inside the houses. It does, but it's also from those congregating outside of the houses while they're chatting, smoking, drinking. The amount of times I'm walking out of my driveway and telling them to go back inside because they're waking me up 2, 3 in the morning where they think they're talking quietly. But they're not.
Yes, that's a very good experience. Yeah. So you are so content, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, then, thank you very much, members. I will take a vote, please, for members that we do so adjourn. May I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. So could I now ask our clerk? I'm so sorry to pounce this on you, Mrs. Hollyoak, but in your usual inimitable fashion, I'm sure you'll be able to assist. Is there a possibility of a date for the adjournment so that people can be so accommodated?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. So the next available date is looking likely to be the Wednesday, the 1st of February, bearing in mind the previous date has 2 items already scheduled, and you also need to allow enough time for Mr. Wright to go away and speak to his client and the acoustic reports to be assessed properly.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kelsey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say that Mr. Wright does have his hand up, and I agree with Ms. Hollyoak that we need to allow time for these things to be continued, and it's going to be, we bear in mind that it's Christmas, New Year now. They're not going to be something that can be done overnight.
Yes, I did see Mr. Wright's hand up, but I did want to deal with the members, Councillor Kelsey, and then to Mrs. Hollyoak. But thank you so much for your assistance in that regard, as always. Mr. Wright, thank you.
Sorry
you have the floor, Mr. Wright.
Yeah, sorry to come in on the debate. Yes, I would welcome an adjournment. I just wanted to say that no residents have made representations in regards to the application. So this is the perceived position by environmental health. But ratio bars are not the previous operator, as it has been explained at length. By Mr.
I think,
Hill.
Mr. Wright, with
we're
this,
a different animal. We're a different.
Yeah, I agree. With the deepest of respect, these are the sorts of things that Councillor Kelsey and Councillor Anderson and myself are the sorts of things that we need you all to go away and have a chat about and look into these mitigations, because obviously you're all feeling concerns about all these issues. But if you all talk to each other and appreciate that you accept the way in which those processes are carried out with the various agencies, the police will have a different way of dealing with that as to perhaps BCP do, but to adopt those particular processes, to take forward any mitigations you need, so that when you come back to us, we've got a much fuller history and we're able to look at something in the cold light of day and to be able to make a reasoned, informed decision. Because today we would be in danger if we were so disposed to consider this, that we would not be making an informed decision, and we do need to be informed. I hope that's helpful. I do understand your frustration, but we do have a date for the 1st of February. Are those members content with that, and also our responsible authorities and our applicant, are you content with that date? I'm seeing Sheriff. I'm not seeing anybody saying no. Councillor Kelsey?
Yeah, I'd be happy with that date, Chair, providing that it is feasible for all parties to have their reports and everything ready, including democratic services.
Indeed, and that question obviously goes without saying, but thank you for saying it. Are we all content that we can all fulfil that time, or would a longer time be required? I'm not seeing any hands. Are we so content? Mrs. Cole?
Thank you. I think the most important thing is we need to have these acoustic reports in. Mr. Wright's already explained that he was, whoever's right, was it Mr. Chibbers? He was still waiting for information back so that he can make his suggestions in a report. The premises already offered not to open until environmental health are happy and the reports are in. And but I think we need to really have a date after that report is in. So I wonder if Mr. Wright's got any idea when he's expecting to be able to get that information.
Thank you, Mrs. Cole. Mr. Wright?
Just to clarify, we did approach the people in November. It was December when they decided to come and do the report. We haven't got a time frame, but we will obviously push the sound consultant and hopefully have him here if Mr. Hill's not happy before the committee to answer any questions that you may have. We will certainly ask him to do that. So the February the 1st, we will aim for that. Could I ask through the chair if Dorset Police and Mr. Hill are willing to meet face to face with us to discuss this?
Chair,
I think that's very much a matter for you to deal with outside of this meeting. I mean, I don't think that's a relevant point to be. It is a relevant point, but not to be made here today. And please feel free to pick the phone up to each other and make a decision on that. We certainly couldn't be disposed to insist that happened. It's very much a matter as to how you want to mediate with each other. Okay, so nobody feels pressured. So are we then content with the 1st of February? Mr. Wright, you are at the helm of this with held captive by your report.
We will do our utmost to get
Because we
ready.
can give you another couple of weeks if you could go into the second week into February, if that would be more assistive. It's not a problem.
February, it means only January we have. In case this guy is always saying busy.
Is there a what William is saying is that this chap is always busy. We approached him in November. He didn't come till December. Is there another date, an alternative date further forward?
Yes, it looks like Valentine's Day again. Anyway, Mrs. Hollyoak.
Yes, the next one after that is the day after, so that's the 15th of February.
15th. I think the 15th of February. I think that gives us a clear 8 weeks. And I think if you are clear this side of Christmas that report is required, Mr. Wright, you will be successful. But it is all rather pivotal on this report and our ability for everybody to be able to respond to that report.
Thank you.
So are you content with the 15th of February?
Yeah, we will do our utmost to have that report to Mr. Hill.
Indeed, I'm sure you will. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we have a date then for adjournment. It just leaves for me to thank everybody very much for their attention today and their attendance. Very important that we do have pertinent information in front of us so we can make an informed, proper decision. And I'm back to Mrs. Hollyoak.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I can just see that Andy Hill has his hand up.
Mr. Hill, you have your hand up. I can't see your hand, but apparently it's up. But carry on.
Sorry, Mr. Wright, you made reference to an additional noise consultant would be appointed who has specialist advice in controlling noise from nightclubs. So can I just point out that he would need to do the reports because that's the information we're looking for.
Yeah,
okay,
I understand that Mr. Chilvers has been in direct contact with you because I'm not a noise expert, and I said I think the two noise people should be talking so we get it right.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Are you saying Mr. Chilvers is not the right person?
Well, I think you also said yourself, Mr. Wright, that you were going to appoint someone who's got specialist advice in controlling noise from nightclubs.
Yeah, he's going to do that.
Well, no, when I spoke to him yesterday, we can discuss this offline then, Mr.
I think you
Wright.
discussed it offline.
Yeah.
Put it this way, on the 15th of February, we'll all meet.
Absolutely.
The subcommittee are
Thank you.
encouraging the applicant and all other parties, please, to have all the relevant pertinent information in order for us to make an informed decision for us on the 15th. If we don't have it, we can't make it. So that said, thank you so much for all your contributions today. And I wish you all a very, very happy Christmas. And I look forward to seeing everybody on the 15th of February. And thank you very much for your kind attentions. Thank you. And we will go offline. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to everybody.
And